Welcome to class 4. Today we are going to be dealing with simple present, present progressive tense, and forms of expressing future time in English. Overview of this class. First, we'll do a revision of verbal categories, special focus on tense and grammatical aspects. Then we deal with present progressive tense, its main uses and meanings, simple present tense, its main uses and meanings, and finally, forms of expressing future time in English. Okay, let's review two of the verbal categories which are more relevant for the tenses we are going to study today, and those are tense and aspect. Tense may be defined as the form a verb adopts to denote time. Tense refers to the inflections used with finite verbs to express a time relation. In English, finite verb phrases can be marked for only two tenses, present with a final S and past with a final ed form. It's important to remember that when verb phrases include a modal auxiliary verb, they are not said to be marked for tense. In English, time reference, especially future time reference, is usually expressed outside the finite verb phrase in adverbials of time. For example, tomorrow, next year, soon. This is something we'll see more in depth later on. Progressive versus simple aspects. The simple present and the present progressive tenses do not differ in tense as such. Both are present tenses, but in their grammatical aspects. While the present progressive tense has progressive grammatical aspect, the simple present tense has simple or non-progressive grammatical aspects. Aspect adds meanings that are not connected to when the situation, event, or state takes place, but to how it is presented or viewed, whether it is presented as complete or incomplete. So many of the differences in the use of these two tenses will be related to the type of aspectual meaning they convey. Let's have a look at the main uses and meanings of the present progressive tense. The present progressive tense usually expresses a situation, action, or state which continues to happen before and after a particular time, which is presented as incomplete. It generally indicates duration and change. Some of its main uses are: 1. To refer to something happening at the moment of speaking. Switch off the television, I'm studying. To refer to something happening around the moment of speaking. It generally refers to temporary situations or habits that take place over an extended but limited period of time. For example, during the quarantine, extended but limited period of time, I'm doing gym at home. Or I'm reading Emma Klein's latest novel, which is an action taking place around the moment of speaking and not necessarily exactly at the very moment of speaking. Number 3, to refer to changing situations, states, developing into other states. We use verbs that indicate increase or decrease in the activity, usually with adjectives and adverbs in the comparative form. For example, it's growing dark little by little. My mom is getting weaker and weaker. So there's a developing state into another state. It grows from light into dark. Number 4, to show annoyance on the part of the speaker, especially when referring to habits that upset the speaker. In this case, the use of frequency adverbs is compulsory. Compare. My boyfriend always phones me at dinner time. Well, this may be simply somebody reporting on a habit of somebody else. There's no emotional reaction to this situation. However, in my boyfriend is always phoning me at dinner time, we can assume that the speaker is upset. To refer to a series of momentary, continuous acts. In this case, it is not just a single action which has duration, but a repetition of many similar ongoing actions. That naughty boy is bouncing the ball again. or someone is knocking on the window. It's not simply one long knock, but many knocks, a repetition of this action. It's not just one knock, but many. Which verbs are usually used in the progressive aspect? Biber et al., in a Student Grammar of Spoken and Written English of 2002, explained that the present progressive tense is most commonly used in conversation. They also list some of the lexical verbs which are frequently used in combination with this aspect, both in present and past tenses. Some of them are bleed, chase, starve, chat, joke, kid, dance, rain, sweat, talk, among others. For example, you might say, if someone has hurt him or herself, you might say, your lip is bleeding, and you would not say your lip bleeds. Or, it's so hot in here, I'm sweating. You would not say, it's so hot in here, I sweat. Or expressions like, are you kidding? Or the guests are starving, let's serve dinner now. Let's move on to the main uses and meanings of the simple present tense. Simple aspect generally refers to situations, events, or states that are conceptualized as complete wholes. Unlike in the progressive aspect, events are not presented as developing or changing in the simple present tense. Some of its main uses are: 1. To express meanings related to something that happens all the time or that is true and general, what we call general or eternal truths. The moon goes round the earth, the Andes run through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. Not all that glitters is gold. To denote habitual actions, generally used with frequency adverbs, Millie seldom tells the truth, we never get up early on Sundays. Or to denote permanent actions or situations. Julia loves cooking, Spaniards eat dinner late. It's important to distinguish the difference between habitual actions and permanent actions. As you can see, Millie seldom tells the truth is something that is repeated, let's say, over and over again as a habit, but Julia loving something, she loves cooking, is something that is permanent and not a habit. Number 4, the simple present tense is used with performative verbs and only first person singular or plural as subject. What is a performative verb? A performative verb is a verb that implies that the action will be accomplished in the speaking of it. That is to say, if I want to marry someone, if a priest wants to marry someone, he should pronounce the word, I declare you husband and wife. If he does not pronounce that word in the simple present tense, he's not marrying them. The same goes for, I'll swear I'll pay you back. If you want to make sure someone will pay you back, you would like that person to pronounce the word swear. I swear I'll do it. Number 5, to report a series of actions with little duration, usually, for example, in sporting events. If you're listening to the radio a football match, the guy might say, Smith runs forward with the ball, kicks and scores a spectacular goal. Or in demonstrations or procedures of some sort, I pour some milk in the bowl and mixed it with the flour. That could be in cooking. Or in stage directions at the theater. You might read in the play, it might say, end of Act 1, enters the king and shouts. Notice the fronting of the verb. This is typical of this register. But of course, you could also say the king enters and shouts. Number 6, this is a special use because it could be equivalent or paraphrased by means of the present progressive. So it's in exclamatory sentences with fronted here or there. Here comes the nurse, or there she goes looking great. So here comes the nurse could be paraphrased by the nurse is coming here or now. Well, the simple present tense might have past time reference. For example, there are of two types: historic dramatic present to add vividness or a sense of immediacy to a statement or narration. For example, in newspaper headlines, you might read, Italy orders an extension of the lockdown. That means Italy ordered. It happened yesterday, last week. But to add vividness to this piece of news, you might or may use the simple present tense. Or when narrating anecdotes, you might shift from simple past tense to simple present tense to add vividness to your narration. I was driving the car when I reach a corner and I see a monkey in the middle of the road. Or it could also be used instead of the present perfect tense, only with a limited number of verbs, like hear, bring, send, tell, write. With hear, it's quite common to hear things like, I hear the neighbors are moving, meaning I've heard the neighbors are moving, something like me enteré. Verbs that are usually used in the simple present tense. Weber et al. List verbs which are more frequently used in the simple present tense. Most of them describe mental or logical states. That is to say, most of them are stative verbs, like bet, doubt, know, matter, mean, mind, suppose, think, differ, imply. I mean, not all of them are stative verbs, but many. So you would say something like, I bet she hasn't arrived yet. And you would not say, I'm betting she hasn't arrived yet. This would be a dynamic verb of little or no duration. This is a stative verb. I don't mind if you leave now. You wouldn't say, I'm not minding if you leave now. Argentina and Chile differ in many respects. You're not going to say are differing. What does it imply? Or I think you're wrong. Note, in the case of think, only when it means to have an opinion will you use it in the simple present tense. Remember, think can also be used in the progressive aspect, but the meaning changes. This happens with many stative and dynamic uses of a same verb. This is something you have already seen and that you should bear in mind when deciding whether to use present progressive or simple present tense. Okay, let's move on to forms of expressing future time in English. Why can't we speak of a future tense in English? As we said at the beginning of this presentation, there are only two verbal inflections in English, the ed for the simple past form and the final s for the third person singular of the simple present. However, the fact that there is no inflectional tense to express future time in English does not mean that the English language cannot express future time. Future time can be expressed by means of modal auxiliary verbs, especially will, modal idioms, like be bound to, be going to, be about to, among many others, and some of the uses of tenses like the simple present, the present progressive, and the present perfect tense. Present progressive with future time reference. It is used to express a previous arrangement. In this case, it is equivalent to the future progressive with future time reference. So, Maluma is performing on June the 3rd at 10 p.m. is equivalent to Maluma will be performing on June the 3rd at 10 p.m. We're going to be seeing this use in a second. Also, it is used to express volition or strong refusal. I'm not drinking that. It smells awful. Or I'm telling her the truth tonight, whether you like it or not. So, tonight, the adverbial denotes future time reference. Simple present tense with future time reference, more uses. It is used to refer to an action regarded as part of a timetable or schedule, usually with a future time adverbial. The last train to Boston leaves in 10 minutes. The French class starts at 11:20 tomorrow. We also have what grammarians call future of the calendar, something that will happen for sure, let's say, because it's in the calendar. My birthday falls on a Thursday next year. There's no change in that. You haven't arranged for that to happen. It happens. In subordinate adverbial clauses of time or condition, when the main clause contains a verb phrase with future time reference. This is a very important use, and sometimes it is difficult for Spanish speakers to understand it. So, for example, are in when you are 21 has future time reference. Why? Imagine a mother tells her child, you live on your own when you are 21. So when the kid asks, when can I live by myself alone? When you are 21. This is a subordinate adverbial clause of time introduced by when. Cuando tengas 21 años, no cuando tenés 21 años. It has future time reference. Something similar happens, I'm going to skip this for a moment, with the present perfect tense with future time reference. It's also used in the same way in subordinate clauses of time. She'll help you as soon as she has finished working. No comma here. She'll help you as soon as introduces the time clause. She has finished working. You could also say as soon as she finishes working. Both of them have future time reference, but in this case there's emphasis on the completion of the action because of the perfect aspect, grammatical aspect of the verb that denotes perfective aspectual meaning. Well, and in this example, we can see an example of an adverbial clause of condition. If she passes the exam at the end of the year, so simple present tense with future time reference, at the end of the year, I'll give her the job. Simple future. One of the most common ways of expressing futurity in English is by means of the modal will, generally in its contracted form. The simple future is often referred to as the colorless future, also neutral future. However, it is important to bear in mind that constructions with will cover a wide variety of modal meanings which do not have future time reference. Well, this is something that you're going to study in depth in third year, but the fact that the simple future is called the colorless future has to do with this. The fact that will can denote a variety of meanings, of different shades of meanings that do not have future time reference. In the case of the colorless future, is something like a future with no color. There's no shade of meaning. It's neutral. Okay, let's see some examples. To talk about events or states which are certain to happen in the future. One day the sun will go out. To express predictions that are based on the speaker's belief, what he or she believes will happen. I'm sure he'll give up that job soon. To express on-the-spot decisions. Someone says, it's dark in here, and someone else reacts, I'll switch on the light. So because someone has said that it was dark, this person decides on the spot, on the spur of the moment, to switch on the light. I'll switch on the light, the contracted form. To make promises, threats, warnings, requests. In this case, the full form is used. I promise I will visit you more often. I swear I won't say a word. The simple future is also used with shall. Shall is archaic. Many years ago, it used to be the choice with first person singular or plural, that is to say with I or we. It was I shall do something, you will do something, we shall do something, they will do something. However, that it's no longer the case, and it has survived only in very formal registers, especially in formal British English. So we might hear Queen Elizabeth say, I shall be glad to make your acquaintance, which is a very formal way of saying, I will be happy to meet you. In conversational English, shall is often used in questions which work as fixed formulas to make offers or suggestions. Shall I pour you another cup of tea? Or, that's an offer. Shall we have lunch in the garden? That's a suggestion. This is not formal. This is conversational, informal. It's also used in tags with let's. Let's leave right now, shall we? We have already seen this, so you remember that this is the modal verb, the auxiliary verb we use for this tag. Sometimes it is used with second or third person, so not simply I or we, but you, he or she, in either formal commands, you shall report at 7 a.m. sharp, a command is an order, or sometimes in legal English, for example, in legal contracts. The tenant shall pay 1,000 pesos in cash as caution money. El inquilino pagará. Excellent. Future progressive. Well, we use it to denote a situation that will be in progress, imperfective spectral meaning, at a point or period in the future. At this time next year, this is the point or period in the future. So at this time next year, it will be in May next year, we'll be living in our new house. So this situation will be in progress. It's presented as incomplete precisely because it's future progressive. Also to indicate that an activity or state will extend over the whole of a future period of time. The future activity is part of a plan or arrangement. We will be having online classes until the end of June. So this having online classes will extend all through May and June until the end of June. Also to denote something that has been arranged, planned, or decided upon. In certain contexts, there is no difference between the use of the present progressive and the use of the future progressive. This is something I have already mentioned. Maluma will be performing on June the 3rd. Maluma is performing on June the 3rd. The future perfect. So it's will plus have plus past participle, will have done. It's used to express situations at a particular point in the future. It's used to express situations that, at a particular point in the future, are seen or regarded as complete. The grammatical aspect of this tense is perfect, with perfective aspectual meaning. So perfect grammatical aspect because it's the future perfect. There is emphasis on the completion of the action and on its consequences. I will have finished my paragraph by 11 a.m. So maybe the teacher needs you to finish your paragraph before midday. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and you can say, I will have finished my paragraph by 11 a.m. So the action is presented as complete, as having perfective aspectual meaning. This future form is also used to indicate that a situation, action, or state will extend or continue for some time and include a point or period of time in the future. So, in the year 2021, my son will have played rugby for 12 years. So, it indicates an action that will extend into the future, into the year 2021, yes, and will include this period. So he's playing rugby now, and in the year 2021, he will have played rugby for 12 years. Now he has played rugby for 11 years. On May the 24th, we will have been in quarantine for over 2 months because we started March the 20th. So by May the 20th, it would be 2 months. On May the 24th, we will have been in quarantine for over 2 months. It's important to see that in both uses, this form allows a retrospective point of view from a particular point in time. What about the future perfect progressive, will plus have been plus ing? The future perfect progressive has, of course, perfect progressive grammatical aspect, but it always conveys imperfective aspectual meaning. It usually refers to a durative situation that is taking place in the present and that will continue into the future up until or through a specific future time. They will have been manufacturing bicycles for 3 years next month. So it means that at present, they are manufacturing bicycles. But next month, in June, they will have been doing that for 3 years. Because apparently they started in June 2017. Or on Friday, the 15th of May, we will have been staying at home for 8 weeks. Note, will is not the only modal that can have future time reference. No. In sentences like it may, it could, it might snow tomorrow, these modals have future time reference thanks to the adverbial tomorrow. The same goes for your parents should or must come next Monday. Modal idioms. There are a number of modal idioms, also called phrasal modals or pseudomodals, that can denote future time reference. Be going to, be able to, be about to, among others. According to Selse-Murcia and Larsen-Freeman in the grammar book, modal idioms develop because central modals lost their connection to time, and these forms provided a way to mark tense and express modality at the same time. Be going to is the most frequently used, and it conveys two main meanings, which I think you have seen in the cursillo de nivelación. Future fulfillment of present intention. I'm going to give her a puppy for her birthday. Or don't worry, Dad is going to help you. Or future result of a present cause. Stop texting while you drive, this would be the cause, and the result, you're going to crash. This is the present cause. She looks very dizzy, this is the present cause. She's going to fall. Be bound to. Helga is bound to arrive at any moment now. It means she's going to arrive, she will arrive. When you use bound to, the event is quite certain to happen. When is the baby due? This has to do with dates. So when is the baby going to be born? When will he, she be born? Sometimes you can ask, when is the deadline due? ¿Cuándo vence la fecha? Be about to. Stop yelling at her. She's about to cry. This is immediate future. You can see that she's on the verge of crying. Be able to. Are you able to attend classes tomorrow? This adverbial helps us recover the future time reference of this modal idiom. Okay, let's round off some of the main concepts we have seen today. The main difference between simple present and present progressive tense is aspectual. One has simple grammatical aspect and the other one progressive grammatical aspect. There are certain lexical verbs that are more frequently used with simple present tense and others with present progressive tense. It often has to do with the meaning and the duration of the verbs. Those verbs that have more duration are more likely to be used in the present progressive tense, like bleed, to bleed, and those that have little or no duration in the simple present tense, like, for example, bet, when you bet something. The meaning of these verbs may change depending on whether they are used in a progressive or non-progressive aspect. This happens with verbs, with stative and dynamic verbs, like, for example, the verb apply. This rule applies to everyone, and I'm applying cream on your back. So you should review these verbs. There's no verbal inflection that is a marker for future tense in English, remember. Will is not the only modal verb that is used to talk about the future. Will does not always have future time reference, something you're going to study in third year. Grammatical aspect and aspectual meaning are vital to understand the meanings and uses of future perfect and future perfect progressive. Finally, remember that not all verbs are actions or events. Sometimes they are states. This will be important so that you don't make mistakes in your future analysis. Well, this is the end of the class. I hope it has been clear. Remember, you can read about these topics in our handout, and if you have doubts or queries, you can post your questions in our forum. Thank you very much.